All right, high rollers, how many times have you sat down in a poker tournament and someone across the table asks, "Hey, anybody know the blinds?" Or "How long is this level? What's the structure?" Are you one of those guys? Well, our guest today is going to talk about the importance of researching such things before placing a chunk of your hard-earned bankroll on the line. Does the structure suit you, or are you a sitting duck? Preston Odie is a poker player, columnist. He's written for Card Player magazine. He is the author of The Art and Science of Poker Tournament Selection. Also very impressive, he's a retired lawyer who successfully argued cases before the United States Supreme Court. Preston, welcome to the show. Thanks for being our high roller today.
Thanks, Derek. Glad to be here.
I listened to a podcast you were on YouTube today where you said that you believe it's important to be passionate, that you're a passionate guy, but that passion is a bad thing at the poker table. And I'm wondering why.
Well, there's a difference between passion and emotion. Emotion is a bad thing at the poker table if you succumb to it and let it influence your play. Passion for the game is not, because passion translates to study, hard work, acquiring knowledge, and enjoying life. It's a fun game.
Yeah, it's important to enjoy life. I mean, the top elite poker players seem to have balance. You look at a guy like Antonio Esfandiari, he works out, he has a life outside of poker, and then when he sits down to the table, he's deadly. Seems to have things in perspective. Do you think poker players these days are generally a happy lot?
Yeah, I think a lot of recreational players are a happy lot. A friend of mine who I coached for a while kind of looks down his nose at recreational players who are loose aggressive and get lucky and suck out on him. And I say, hey, they're having a good time. Give them a break. They're enjoying themselves. Are you enjoying yourself as much as they are?
Exactly. I mean, that's a key point to poker. You got to have fun. Now, we've got two specific examples of tournament structures that we're going to talk about today, a fast structure and a slow structure. But first, I think it's important to note that, yes, there are huge differences in all of the tournament structures out there. No matter where you play, there seems to be a different structure. And there is a way to optimize your strategy based on the speed of that play. I mean, this is something you really have to look at because there are so many varied structures.
Yes, that's right. And I never play in a tournament, ever, without getting a copy of the structure sheet, usually well in advance, and looking at it and seeing what kind of tournament this is. That dictates how I play. I mean, it's just that simple.
So when you sit down in a tournament, and like I said off the top, some guy says, "Hey, anybody know the blinds?" or "How long until the blinds go up?" You must think to yourself that you already have an edge.
Well, it depends on the tournament I'm playing in, whether I have an edge. I have an edge in slow and very slow tournaments because I have a skill edge post-flop. So those are the kind of tournaments I look for. And then I'll know what my edge is once I sit down at the table and, look at my opposition.
You estimate that 10% of poker players out there are playing their chip stacks instead of their cards. I mean, the elite players, that's not too many. It seems like most of the poker players out there need to do more work in this area.
Well, if you want to win in poker, at both cash games and tournaments, you play the stacks. I mean, Tommy Angelo in his book, his latest book, says he used to think cards first and then stacks. Now he thinks stacks first, cards second. And he said, I look at chip stacks just the way a pilot looks at an altimeter. That's how important chip stacks are.
Wow, okay, so sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my chip stacks, counting my profit, not really paying attention to my opponent's chip stacks. I really could be using that as a weapon in certain spots.
Oh, yeah, and here's how critical chip stacks are. Tommy Angelo says in his book, you need to be aware of everybody's stacks because it's a life or death matter. It's your tournament life. If someone has more chips than you, he can knock you out.
Before we talk about the two examples, the one at the MGM Grand and the WSOP main event from 2015, you see in poker a lot of players, the young ones, they're trying to make strides, they're trying to advance, go up in ranks, play higher games, and they seek out, coaching, they seek out the top professionals asking for advice, and they're looking for the secret, right? Cash games and tournaments. What is the secret? Do you have an answer yet?
Well, besides hard work, And emotional control, to me, the best answer to that question for both cash games and tournaments is game selection. You gotta pick the right cash games, and you gotta pick the right tournaments that best match your skill set, your temperament. If you're a patient guy, play slow tournament. If patience is your strength, it's a liability in a fast tournament. If you have more skill in post-flop play, you want to get a lot of play, playing a slow tournament with lots of chips. If you're just having a great time and you're very aggressive, play fast tournaments. Game selection.
Game selection is crucial. When I think of game selection, I usually think of the game I can afford to play in, and if I can spot a maniac or two, that's the depth in which I go, but it's far beyond that.
It's far beyond that.
Okay, so let's run down the two charts we've got here. We've got the daily deep stacks at the MGM Grand, and then the WSOP main event from 2015. Can you talk about those two tournaments in terms of the blind structure, the starting chips, that sort of thing, and how they differ and how you should approach them?
Yes, they're completely different tournaments. I picked the MGM Grand Daily Deep Stack because that's not atypical of a lot of the, low buy-in tournaments in Las Vegas. It's a really fast tournament. They give you 15,000 chips. The blinds are 25.50, and you're starting with 300 big blinds. That's why they call it a deep stack. Well, that is incredibly deceptive because the levels are only 15 minutes. Okay? Oh my God. So this is a fast tournament, and if you don't play aggressively, if you don't play situational poker, if you're just sitting there waiting for good hands, you're going to lose unless you just get fabulously lucky. Okay? So, what I do, I chart playing speed. And until I chart playing speed, I don't know how that tournament's going to play itself out. And that dictates how you play. Let's look at the MGM Grand Daily Deep Stack. Yeah, you start with 300 big blinds. So in the first level, which is 15 minutes, your blinds and antes are 25.50. You're going to pay them once. That doesn't cost you very many chips, okay? You're going to have over 14,900 of your starting stack left after playing a 15-minute level. But then look at how fast they escalate. Second level, the blinds go up to 5,100, okay? Now, your 300 big blinds aren't there anymore, okay? You basically got 140 big blinds after 15 minutes. And if you go down and look at, after just 4 levels, you're down to what? Maybe 30, 40 big blinds?
Yeah, it goes quick. So playing style matters, right? Because I'm on the tighter side in tournaments, and I used to play this nightly tournament at my local casino. Unless I won a hand early on, I'd look down after an hour of folding and, oh my God, it's all in stage at this point.
Oh yeah, and so you shouldn't play fast tournaments. It's inconsistent with your temperament and your playing style. And most people cannot change their playing style or their temperament. That's hard to do, especially for a recreational player.
Well, you'll notice how I said used to. I mean, I did stop playing that event because I realized that I was a sitting duck. I had no chance. I mean, I wasn't a maniac like these guys, and I realized that tournament was not for me.
Well, that's smart, and that's exactly right, because you can't play tight in that kind of tournament. You have to play fast. You can't play your cards because you're only getting dealt 30 hands per hour without automatic shufflers. Okay, if you're playing 10% of the hands, that's only 3 hands in the first 3 levels. And if you don't win some chips in those 3 hands, you're going to have about 12,000 chips, if you look at my chart, to start level 5. That's only 20 big blinds. So you're getting into push or fold territory here, aren't you?
Absolutely, and I think that's a key distinction that you make there. You cannot play your cards in that tournament. You have to play your chip stack. You say the best optimal strategy is, quote, situational play matching the number of pots entered to the speed of the tournament, consistently playing each hand to achieve the specific strategic objective of maintaining a competitive stack of at least 60 big blinds. Why is 60 big blinds important?
Well, it's important because it's a competitive chip stack, okay? If you look at chip stacks, if you've got 100 big blinds, or say 300 big blinds to start the tournament, you're fully competitive. You can make all moves. You can bet for information after the flop and then fold. Okay, you can try and steal a pot and then fold. So, you can float. You can do anything with over 100 big blinds. Minimally competitive stack is 60 big blinds. You still have most moves available. You have good implied odds. So, if you're playing with pocket fours, you've got the implied odds to hit your set. So that's a competitive chip stack. So my goal in tournaments is to maintain a competitive chip stack. That's more important than trying to read people. That's more important than anything. Now, let's say you get down to 40 to 50 big blinds. That's an awkward stack size. I mean, you still got chips, okay? And in some tournaments, that may be the average stack at your table, okay? So, there's still room to play. There's decent implied odds. But then you get down to 30 big blinds. That's an awkward stack. You got limited flexibility. You've got poor implied odds. You're losing your ability to compete in this tournament is what you're losing.
You have to pick your spots, and you say 60 big blinds because, after an hour or so, if you don't pick up a hand, you're right, there are no moves to be made except pushing all your chips in at once. So you have to get in there, realize the blind structure, and mix it up early on?
Yes, you absolutely have to mix it up early on in a fast tournament, okay? Now, a slow tournament's different. You got plenty of time to play. You can sit there and wait. A WSOP main event, man, you can play 3 hands an hour all day long. You do that in a fast tournament, you're done. You're going to run out of chips.
All right, well, let's talk about the WSOP main event structure. You've got a chart from 2015. Can you talk about how vastly different this is than the daily deep stacks?
Yeah, let me bring this up. I've got it here somewhere. I use the WSOP main event structure for 2015 in my book. You get 30,000 in starting chips. That's 300 big blinds. But the levels are 2 hours. Oh my God. Okay? So if you look at your starting chip stack at 30,000 chips, you've got a ton of time to play. There's a concept called blind off time. If you do the math and calculate it, and I show in my book how to do that, you can play in the WSOP main event for 2015, and every year for that matter, for about 13 hours before your starting chip stack is gone. That's 400 hands. That's a lot of time to play. Somebody I remember once asked Joe Hatcham, who's a main event winner, who would win the main event, the next year, the year after he played, and he said, the one with the most patience. It's a patience game.
Right, so you got a guy that's playing, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday through Sunday, the nightly deep stack. He comes to the WSOP main event with that same style. He's going to be hitting the exit early. You need to adjust in that situation because patience is the key.
Yes, patience is the key to a slow tournament. Post-flop play is the key. Let's say you have pocket queens and you've got over 100 big blinds, okay? And you get raised pre-flop for all your chips with pocket queens. What do? You fold every single time. You're playing for your tournament life. You've got plenty of time to play. There'll be better spots where you'll have, a straight, a flush, whatever. You fold. Now, if you're in a fast tournament like the one we've been talking about, the MGM Grand, and the tournament's just starting, and you got pocket queens and somebody raises you all in pre-flop, I'd call that in a heartbeat. If I'm out, I'm out. If those queens are good, I double up.
Bottom line, in those fast tournaments, you got to take the chance because at the end of the day, that is proper strategy.
That is absolutely proper strategy. If you don't gamble, if you're not aggressive in a fast tournament, go home. You're wasting your money.
How does skill level or even temperament come into play? You know, some people are very calm, some people are agitated, some people are laughing all the time, some people are just downright angry, and there are good players versus bad players. How do you factor all these things in when deciding what structure is best for you?
Well, what structure is best for me depends on my playing style and my skill level, not who's going to be in this tournament. Now, if you take, some tournaments that I'm familiar with, like I live in Denver and I go to Las Vegas all the time and I go to Reno to play. In Reno, the tournaments are relatively fast. There's a lot of loose players from Northern California. They're going to make a lot of mistakes. So part of my strategy is, hey, I'm just going to wait for these guys to make mistakes. I've got the chips to do it. There's enough chips in this tournament. So, yeah, it's a factor. But the main factor is what's the speed of this tournament and how fast do I have to play to maintain a competitive chip stack? If you look at the MGM Grand Tournament, if you want to maintain a competitive chip stack of 60 big blinds, you're going to need a lot of chips, okay? You're going to need a lot of chips. I think I calculated it. It's something like 36,000 chips after 4 levels. Well, you only start with 15,000. So, if you want to maintain a competitive chip stack, you've got to take chances. You've got to gamble. You've got to push with everything you've got, all your chips, even with a small edge. 53% favorite. You push them to the max. In the WSOP main event, you have a 53% edge. You're playing for all your chips. You fold every time.
Right, because you got time to build it back up. The book is called The Art and Science of Poker Tournament Selection. We're on the line with Preston Odie, the author. It must make you smile when you see a guy like Daniel Negreanu put so much time and effort into analyzing tournament structures. He's done vlogs about it. He's done videos. He's out there talking about, okay, this is the level I'm going to make my move. This is how many chips I'm going to have after a certain level. Is that how you approach it? I mean, take us through what you do once you get the tournament structure. How do you figure out the speed of play?
Well, I calculate it by hand and chart it because I think it's very insightful, okay? But there's a very good online resource on Arnold Snyder's blackjack form. It's called the Patience Factor Calculator. And it's a wonderful tool. You can just plug in the blind structure and it will spit out a little chart that tells you how long it takes for you to lose your entire amount of your starting stack by playing the blinds and antes. And it'll give what's called a patience factor, how long you've got to play, how much time you've got to play. You're playing 30 hands an hour. If you've got 6 hours before blind off all your chips to start, that's 6 hours. That's 3 times 180 hands, okay? My math is right. So I pick tournaments based on a structure sheet. And even before charting the speed, here's what I look for in structure sheets. Number 1, how long do I have to play to win this tournament? Well, if it's WSOP main event, it's 9 days, okay? If it's a little fast tournament in Las Vegas, it may be 5 hours, and I can win it in 5 hours.
Right.
So how long do you have to play to win the tournament? I was playing in the Venetian Deep Stacks once, and it starts at noon, and somebody asked, how long does this tournament last? And I went, well, he's not going to be here at the end. He doesn't even know how long this thing lasts. I got my briefcase under the table with all kinds of goodies in it and snacks, and I know I have to play till 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm there for the duration. So I want to know, how long do I have to play to win the tournament, and am I ready to make that commitment? I want to know, is there a dinner break? And, how long until the dinner break? I want to know how evenly the blinds and antes escalate. Are there big jumps and gaps in there where I'm going to have to adjust, where they jump up the blinds and the antes? I want to know that. I want to know if there's missing blind levels. There often are. And I want to know what Arnold Snyder, in his excellent book, Poker Tournament Formula, calls the minefield. Because every tournament has a minefield. And the minefield is, if you chart tournament speed and you see that in level 8, for example, Everybody who started this tournament with 15,000 chips and didn't accumulate them is going to be short stacked. Well, they're in push or fold mode. That's why it's the minefield. And if you raise in the minefield and there's short stacks behind you, chances are they're going to push. So you better know that before you play.
That's very interesting because I wonder how many poker players out there are not even aware that they're in the minefield when they're in it.
Well, probably quite a few, but I definitely know when I'm in it. And I'll give you an example of playing the minefield. Let's suppose I have a competitive chip stack of 80 big blinds, and I'm in the minefield. Hey, I don't need to accumulate chips in this minefield. I have a competitive stack right now. I got plenty of time to play. I have the option of just sitting it out, just paying the blinds and the antes and sitting there and watch these people go at each other. Unless I draw a huge hand. That's an option you have with a competitive chip stack. Now, let's change it. Let's say I've got 30 big blinds. Wow, gee. And let's say I know, because I always keep track of the cost of paying the blinds and antes, that at the end of the minefield, I'm only going to have 20 big blinds. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to play in this minefield.
Right, you're going to gamble it up. This is fascinating stuff. Again, we're on the line with Preston Odie. Tell us about the book. How did you get interested in this area of poker, the area of tourney selection? I mean, was there an epiphany? Did something happen to you? Why this area?
Well, I like to compete. And while I like cash games, tournaments are different. They're a competition, okay? And they're challenging. And if you're a competitor, tournament poker is great for you. I was a lawyer for 40 years. That's real competition. Okay, I was a trial lawyer, tried over 100 cases. That's competing. And so poker appeals to that same need I have to compete.
Yeah, you talk about being a retired lawyer. A lot of lawyers are playing poker these days. You've had great success at poker. Your OPR ranking is quite high. Seems all the smart people are flocking to poker. What is your take on the state of the game these days? Does it amaze you where poker has come?
Poker's going downhill, in my opinion.
Really?
Yes, it is going downhill. And it's not like, back when Poker Stars was going online and all these pros were sponsored and everybody was playing online and that money flowed into the poker economy and there were great cash games and it was wonderful. Well, it's not like that anymore. There's not as much money in the poker economy. And in tournaments, there's not the slow tournaments, the very slow tournaments that you used to have. Casino poker rooms play to their customers. And most players are there to have fun. They're there to gamble. So most of the poker tournaments in Las Vegas, and I think just about everywhere now, are fast tournaments. And my edge is in very slow tournaments because I have a skill edge. So, I'm not that enamored right now with the state of poker.
Let me ask you one more question before we let you go. And I'm curious because it seems poker is going this way both in the live arena, the brick and mortars, and also in the online venue with these multiple re-entry. These players that can put some money in, play the tournament, gamble it up. If they bust, they can buy right back in. They've got up to 3 entries, or you can enter again on the second day. What's your take on this? I know casinos are trying to bring in more entries, but is it fair? Is it good for the game?
Well, it's good for the house, okay? It's good for the house, and, it's not bad for the game. Some people think it gives well-bankrolled players an edge, and it does. It does. If you can afford 3 or 4 re-entries, you're going to play differently. You're going to take chances. You got a better shot at acquiring a big stack. And a big stack is a huge edge in the hands of a skilled player. So you could say that the re-entry formula favors skilled players with good bankrolls.
Yeah, you talk about a skilled player with a big chip stack. Sometimes when they're using it as a weapon, it's just beautiful to watch. They bully everybody. It's a real art.
It is an art, and it's a wonderful thing to have a big stack. When I have a dominant stack and I'm first one into the pot, I come in raising. I don't care if it's under the gun with 7 deuce. I got a big stack. I can kill everybody at that table. And everybody at that table knows I'm stealing them blind. And that's fine with me because because I'm going to wake up with a hand, and then I'm going to get somebody's stack when I do.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're pushing them around, there's really not much they can do about it because of their chip stack size. Preston Odie, poker player, columnist, and author of The Art and Science of Poker Tournament Selection. Preston, thank you so much. It's been fascinating.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.